Hey everybody, it's Screaming Screen. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. It's the best way to keeping up to date with all of Screaming Screen's great new videos. Ant-Man was a relatively low-key affair after the shocking events of Captain America, The Winter Soldier and Avengers: Age of Ultron, and while the sequel is similarly self-contained, Ant-Man and the Wasp still features plenty of big surprises and unexpected twists, some of which set some pretty big things up for the Marvel Cinematic Universe moving forward, specifically with Avengers 4 next year. Now, with the movie finally in theaters, well, unless you live in a country where the World Cup is taking place, we're taking a look at all of the biggest twists, turns, and shocking moments, then breaking those down and shedding some light on what comes next. Needless to say, major spoilers follow from this point onwards, but if you've already seen the movie or are simply curious, for the past 2 years, Scott Lang has been under house arrest, and his actions during Captain America: Civil War have resulted in Hank Pym and Hope Van Dyne becoming fugitives as well. In some rather awkward exposition, we then learn that Ant-Man turned himself in and spent some time behind bars before agreeing to a deal with the government, which means that if he ever breaks the Sokovia Accords again, he'll go to prison for 20 years. That immediately increases the stakes for the hero here. Why? Well, he only has days left on house arrest when the sequel begins and 3 years probation after that, so unless the Sokovia Accords are dumped after Avengers 4, he'll have to do it in secret. After Captain America: Civil War. After Captain America broke Scott Lang and his fellow Avengers out of the raft, he got his Ant-Man suit back and decided to post it to Louise in order to stop the government from getting their hands on it. That explains a lot, but it also means the hero has to wear a prototype for the rest of the sequel, which constantly malfunctions and causes him to increase and decrease in size at random intervals. There's a lot of tension between Scott and Hank, while Hope just seems disappointed that he went off to help out Cap without her. As the movie progresses, though, they all put their differences aside. Sonny Burch's role. There's been a lot of speculation about what Sonny Burch will be getting up to in Ant-Man and the Wasp, but Walton Goggins actually has a much larger role than the trailers have actually indicated. He's actually a black market arms dealer, and he's working for someone who's extremely anxious to get their hands on Hank's technology and to start siphoning off quantum energy from the quantum realm. Quantum is said an awful lot in this movie. Interestingly, his mysterious employer is never identified, and that could be a sign we'll end up meeting them in a third Ant-Man installment. Time will tell. The big Bill Foster twist. Personally, I saw this coming a mile off, but I suppose it could still be considered a pretty major twist. After Ghost kidnaps Scott, Hank, and Hope, we learn that she's in cahoots with Bill Foster, someone who holds an awful lot of resentment against Hank after they worked in SHIELD together, where the former Ant-Man decided to fire him. However, he's still far from a villain in the sequel. You see, he simply wants to help Ghost because she's been in his care since she was a child, and her powers are now causing her to fade out of existence. However, saving her means using quantum energy, which will essentially tear Janet apart, something he's clearly conflicted about. Ghost, meanwhile, is so desperate to survive she doesn't seem to care, but she's not your typical villain. In fact, her backstory is rather tragic, and the identity of her father is definitely a major surprise. Egghead. It turns out that Oz stars Ava's father, and after he was fired by Hank Pym, he continued trying to retrieve energy from the quantum realm, something which resulted in the death of him and his wife and left Ghost with her powers. So, where's she been since? Well, SHIELD forced her to work for them in exchange for curing her, a promise they never actually kept. Typical Nick Fury, right? That's why she's such a skilled fighter, and when the spy organization crumbled, Foster rescued her and has been looking after her ever since. It's highly unlikely we'll see Egghead ahead, as his death is pretty definitive, but it definitely looks like Ghost is being set up as an ally to Ant-Man and the Wasp. Teases for Cassie Lang's future. Rumor has it that we'll see an older version of Cassie Lang in Avengers 4, and that she'll have become stature by that point. Based on some of the remarks she makes in the sequel, it's highly likely that being a hero is in her future, because Marvel dropped a lot of hints here that she'll one day become a young Avenger. Given her age at the moment, though, the studio is going to take its time with this. Hank Pym's superhero suit. Rumor has it that in Edgar Wright's version of Ant-Man, Hank Pym would have suited up as the villainous Black Hand. We'll probably never know the full story behind what would have happened there, but the scientist finally gets a suit of sorts in the sequel when he travels into the quantum realm. It bears a vague resemblance to the Ant-Man suit but is designed to protect him from the energy within that mysterious dimension, so don't expect to see him wear it into action somewhere down the line. Still, it's a lot of fun seeing Michael Douglas finally get this opportunity, and the actor looks great. Finding Janet Van Dyne. We never learn what Janet has spent the past 30 years doing in the quantum realm, or how she's managed to survive, but when Scott traveled there in the first movie, she managed to place an antenna of sorts in his head which she later uses to communicate with Hank and Hope. There's even a pretty bizarre scene where she briefly takes control of Scott because of the link they've established. Honestly, you shouldn't expect to see a whole lot of her in this sequel, and her role feels somewhat dissatisfying as a result. That's something which can be expanded on down the line, but her presence leaves us with more questions than answers, and there's definitely more to her than meets the eye. Saving Ghost. During her time in the quantum realm, Janet has evolved and gained some mysterious new abilities. Those include helping Ghost to reform by using the quantum energy stored within her to help Ava and stop her from fading into nothing. Whether that means she'll be a MacGuffin in Ant-Man 3 remains to be seen, but there's a very good chance that she's hiding something possibly sinister from our heroes. Avengers 4 teaser. At the end of the movie, Hank and Janet head to the beach, while Scott and Hope share a kiss and enjoy a movie with Cassie. However, the true ending doesn't take place until the mid-credits scene. In a bid to continue helping Ghost, Scott is going to return to the quantum realm to retrieve more energy which will stabilize her. Before he enters, Janet warns him to avoid heading into a time vortex, and that's bound to tie into Avengers 4, especially as we've seen set photos of Ant-Man interacting with the Avengers era Captain America. And now, though, he's trapped inside the quantum realm. Why? Well, back in our world, we see that Hank, Hope, and Janet have all turned to dust after Thanos snapped his fingers, leaving Scott alone to try and save the day in the superhero ensemble next May. The after-credits scene. At the end of the movie, we return to Scott Lang's house where the TV screen is blank, clearly as a result of half of Earth's population disappearing, and the camera pans around a corner to reveal a giant ant playing the drums. Honestly, it's a fun scene but not one worth sticking around for, and it's bound to irritate fans who are hoping for something a little bit more substantial in this scene. Something you might want to wait for, though, is that Ant-Man and the Wasp will return? Message at the end of the sequel. That's right, those bastards actually put a question mark on that in order to leave us guessing and worrying what the future holds in store for these two after the shocking events of Avengers, Infinity War and the movie's mid-credits scene. I guess we'll have to wait and see. What do you think about these Ant-Man and the Wasp spoilers? Are you excited to see the movie if you haven't already? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section down below.